What's going on, everyone? Today I got a ton to plant, so I'm going to be showing you what you can plant for your garden right now in March. Let's go. So when it comes to March, March is a lot of things to a lot of people, but to me, March is planting month. And March is a season when you're going to be starting a lot of your early season stuff, your cold weather crops, but you also are going to be starting a lot of your warm weather stuff as well that take longer to mature. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through all the stuff we're planting, but first I got to get some seed starting mix moistened up here. First thing you always want to do, if you're new to gardening, you'll definitely benefit from this. But if you've been watching this channel, you've already heard me say this, you got to pre-moisten your seed starting mix. Have to. Now when it comes to the seed starting mix we're using our go-to. We actually found this works very well for us. It's a 50% blend of hydrated cocoa coir and 50% blend of Pro Mix. It's Pro Mix, high porosity with mycorrhizae added. Mycorrhizae is the beneficial fungi that thrive in soil. They create a symbiotic relationship with plant roots. They go out and they actually help the plant roots obtain nutrients and water. So they're really important to have. And so we're combining two soilless growing mediums together, and what we get from that is we get really great texture. I really enjoy the texture of a 50-50 blend. But as I've always said, gardening is not a one-size-fits-all solution. That's just what we use. So by all means, test and find out what works for you. Second thing we did prior is we gave it a good sift. Now, most Pro Mixes have already been pre-sifted. I like to do it as just a good measure. I like a real fine seed starting mix. I don't like a lot of chunks in mine. So a lot of the wood bits and particles and chunks should always be sifted out. We've got a video on how we did that. We've made like a little at-home sieve. Just shake it around, get all the wood chip bits, especially if you're not using something pre-sifted. Like I said, Pro Mix generally is. The reason why you want to pre-moisten your mix is because, as you can tell, I dumped all that water on, and even now, it didn't just readily absorb. It doesn't absorb really fast. When soil is super dry, it has a tendency to kind of avoid absorbing water. It doesn't really like it at first. So by pre-moistening, what you're going to do is you're going to basically incorporate water into that soil, so it's a little more accepting of it when you go to water your seeds in the future. All right, so we got our trays that we're going to be starting in, and these are brand new to us. We actually fell in love with these so much that we started carrying them over at MIgardener.com. Now, these are the Bootstrap Farmer seed starting trays. Now, these are the 4 cells, crazy rigid. You can actually stand on these suckers. Not that I recommend it, but you can, and they're really rigid. We got our 6 cells here. These are going to be great for our cold weather crops, like our cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, stuff like that. Stuff that's not going to be in there all that long, and we're not going to transplant it again, because I don't want to move from here into something like this. That's just a waste of time and space. I'd rather start something in here that's going to grow in here for about 5 to 7 weeks, and then it's going to go from here right into the garden as soon as it's warm enough. So these are going to hold our cold weather stuff. Then we have here a 72 cell tray. This sucker is amazing, so rigid. Like, this thing is really heavy duty. Seed starting tray holds it like not breaking that sucker. Dishwasher safe as well. So cool. Like I said, fell in love with these. Made in the USA, can't get any better quality. And then we have our 3-inch pots. So these are going to be for like our onions. We always multi-sow our onions. So when we sow our onions, we don't put one seed in each cell. We'll talk more about it when we start sowing, but we don't put one seed in each cell. It just takes a lot of space. And space is a premium, especially when you're growing mostly indoors. And so a lot of these, because we're in a greenhouse right now, they're still going to go in a grow room because it's still far too cold at night. We're just out here because it's nice weather. But we're not going to put a single seed in each cell. We're going to put like about 30 seeds in a 3-inch pot. That way we're getting 10, 20 times as many seeds planted in the same amount of space. We're going to start with our multi-sowed stuff. Now, the process of multi-sowing is awesome because what it allows you to do is allows you to start some stuff that you wouldn't normally start indoors, because it might not transplant all that well. And what we're going to do is we're going to get an earlier start, meaning we're going to get that much earlier of a harvest, but it also allows us to, again, grow some stuff that we wouldn't normally grow indoors. Stuff like your root crops, right? So beets is a prime example of this. We're going to multi-sow our beets. And when we multi-sow beets, we're basically planting about 3 to 4 seeds per cell. And that's why we're using these Bootstrap Farmer deep 4 cells here, because it's going to allow a lot of room for root development. a lot of room for those seedlings to actually develop, and we're not going to thin. We're not going to take out seedlings like we normally would. You see, if we plant something like, a tomato seed, we're going to plant maybe 2 seeds in each cell. There's not enough room in here for 2 tomato seeds to grow up for 5 to 7 weeks. It's not going to happen. Only 1 can grow in here. And then after that, it's going to need to be transplanted from here into like something like this, or preferably something like this. And that's just 1 plant. Versus multi-sown, what you're doing is you're allowing 3 to 4 plants to grow up in the same space, and you're going to take that plant, that cell pack, those plants I should say, move them directly out into the garden, and that's how they're going to mature. They're going to grow like that, and they're going to form their own individual beets right there, and they're basically going to be a little clump of beets that are formed from that 1 cell pack you put in the garden. It's really handy to grow a lot of plants in a small space. One of their cool things about these trays is the fact they have these slits on the side. Bootstrap Farmer created these slits to actually air prune the roots. What you'll notice is when roots get confined and they start to spin around and around and around, they get what's called root bound. And that's actually stress. It's almost like your muscles over time, when you're doing something repetitive, it's called muscle memory. And that muscle memory of a root can go coil around and around. And when you plant it out in the garden, sometimes it has a hard time breaking that muscle memory. With root pruning or air pruning, what happens is those air pruned roots, they actually fork and they divide, and it creates a much more spider webby root system rather than a continuous coil. So it actually transplants out into the garden better as well, which is awesome. So we're gonna take these beets and we're basically just gonna put, like if you see the eyes on a coconut, that's kind of how I always describe it, right? Or like you grip a bowling ball, right? You might grip a bowling ball this way, right? Just kind of pop those holes in there. All right, second crop we're starting right now is asparagus. Asparagus is one of my favorite crops to grow, and it has a very aggressive deep root system. And so we're only going to plant about 2 seeds per cell here, but we're putting them in these deep 4-packs here because, again, we're going to let these grow for probably the next 2-3 months in these cell packs here. Really get them established early as well because they're a perennial. The more established they can be, the faster you're going to get them to grow, faster you're going to get a harvest in your garden. And because these need a couple years to actually get growing before you can harvest, the sooner you can start them, the better. So I'm putting them in here in these 4 cell packs, and they're going to do awesome in these. Now again, too, because the cells actually have air pruning slits in them, it's really going to help to, again, get that wiry root system going. So once I transplant out in the garden, they're going to be ready to rock. All right, we're just going to cover these up with a little bit of soil, get them watered in. So next thing we're going to be starting is our cold weather stuff. Now, our cold weather stuff, it's super important that you remember this, that cold weather stuff should be started early because it doesn't like warm weather. And a lot of gardeners make this mistake. They think, well, okay, so my garden is typically, think of like your main season, right? My main season might be July or August, right? So they'll say, well, I'll start my seeds in my garden when the weather warms up. I'm going to put my cold weather stuff out early. Problem is those seeds won't germinate in cold soil. They have a hard time germinating in anything below 45, 50 degrees. Right now, the soil temperatures are still like right around freezing, if not freezing. And so because the nighttime temperatures still are below freezing, those seeds are not going to germinate. They're going to stay dormant. Your broccoli, your cabbage, your cauliflower, seeds we'll get into, they're not going to germinate. You want to start them now so you actually have a seedling to move out into the garden. And what that's going to do is going to allow that plant to grow during the cold weather. See, the seeds, they don't like the cold weather, but the plants do. So it's a weird phase, right? So we start them indoors or in a greenhouse to get them growing, and we move them outside when the weather is still cold so they can grow slowly, mature slowly, and form a nice big plant, get that really big structure to them to form all that beautiful fruit, like in the case of our Calabrese broccoli or our self-blanching cauliflower, even our cabbages, right? We want a big, healthy plant to provide us a big, healthy harvest. So that's why we're starting those right now. Don't make the mistake of starting them in your garden later, because what happens if you start them too late, they're going to grow, season's going to get warm, and then basically they're going to go to seed or form fruit when they're still very young, and that's going to form a very small harvest for you. So bigger harvest means starting early. A quick tip for you guys. There's some seeds that we're going to be succession sowing. That's the process of starting some now, and then in about 1 or 2 weeks, we're going to start some more. That means when we plant them out in the garden, or we direct sow some stuff into the garden, we're not going to have a harvest all at once. You don't want, 100 beets all at once, unless of course you're canning. But if you don't want 100 beets all at once, you're going to succession sow. If you don't want, 100 heads of lettuce all at once, you're going to succession sow. And that means you're going to be harvesting some every week, but you're not going to have everything all at once. And so with like our lettuce and our spinach and stuff, we don't want to start our entire garden right now. I see it all the time. Gardeners make this mistake of planting out way more than they're ever going to need. And then they also say, well, I also plan on starting some later as well, but they just have tray space. It's kind of like money burning a hole in your pocket. Like, just because you have the tray space doesn't mean you need to plant more than you're going to use. Otherwise, you're going to be met with that dilemma of wasting seed, wasting soil, and ultimately wasting a lot of time. Because if you are planning on starting stuff out in your garden, like in the case of our spinach and our lettuce, it makes no sense to start a bunch more than we actually need to. So have that game plan in mind. Know what you're going to succession sow. Know what you're going to start all of. Like, for instance, our cauliflower and our broccoli and stuff, it gets way too hot, way too fast. There's no way we're going to be able to start seeds directly in the garden for cauliflower and broccoli. It's not going to happen. So we're going to start all of our garden worth of cauliflower and broccoli right now. And our lettuce and our spinach, we're only going to start maybe about 25% of our garden's worth. What we got to start right now is our Swiss chard. We have our Rainbow Lights Swiss chard. I absolutely love this variety. Super colorful, incredible flavor and texture, but it also grows from basically from spring when we plant it all the way to fall, and it even tolerates the summer heat. It is awesome. Never gets bitter, never gets stringy. It is just like awesome. We have our cauliflower. Now, cauliflower is a little bit tricky, but the sooner you can start it, the bigger it can get, the better you're gonna be. So we got our self-blanching cauliflower and our snowball cauliflower. The thing about cauliflower that gets a little tricky, most people kind of fail at, is once it actually forms a head, is getting those leaves tied up to actually form form what they call a blanching cone. That blanching cone keeps the sun away from that beautiful white head of cauliflower, and it actually keeps it from turning yellow or brown. And so what you want to do is form that blanching cone by tying those leaves up, and that's going to get you that nice white beautiful head of cauliflower. We also have here some broccoli. I love broccoli. This variety does best for us in early season. That's the Calabrese. For fall, we'll plant a lot of different varieties. We'll plant our DeCiccio, we'll plant our Waltham 29. Lots of different varieties of broccoli do very well in fall for us because we're going from warm weather into cold weather, much more natural transition, rather than cold weather, snapping your fingers, you're already in like a bikini. So it's like from 30 degrees to 80 degrees, almost snap of a finger. So I find Calabrese does better with that shock than other varieties. We also have our lettuce and our spinach. So our lettuce and our spinach here, our lettuce and our spinach. So these are the ones we're going to be kind of succession sowing. It's only a small fraction of the lettuce we're going to be growing this year, maybe about 25% of our total garden's worth of lettuce and spinach. But this is just kind of a good idea for what we're starting. We got some American spinach. We got some giant noble spinach. Beautiful. One's for kind of sauteing and wilting. That's the giant noble. The other one is like baby spinach. That's American spinach. Super tiny leaves, super buttery, beautiful. Oh, it's amazing. Love it. Hanson improved crisp head lettuce. Really beautiful, crisp, crunchy leaves. Wonderful in wraps and salad, salad wraps and things like that. Awesome. Also, two different red lettuces here. We got our super red romaine, all-time crowd favorite. Love it. It's like everyone in our family loves that one. And then ruby red leaf lettuce. It's really great. Adds some beautiful deep red kind of ruby burgundy color into salads. It's awesome. Now we also have our cabbages. Now cabbages is one of our favorite crops to grow. It's so satisfying to get these big beautiful heads. And we have here a purple Savoy. It's so new, so awesome, so incredible. I love this one. I fell in love with this the moment we started carrying it. And so we're gonna throw that in the garden this year. It's got like a green-red ombre. It's so cool. I have an all-seasons cabbage. It's like a mid-season variety of cabbage. It's terrific. Handles the heat well. Does really great. We have a Napa cabbage for making things like kimchi. We're going to try that this year. I also have some Mammoth Red Rock. We always grow Mammoth Red Rock. It's like it's a staple for us. And then another staple for us that we always grow is awesome in things like just shredded cabbage, coleslaw, sauerkraut, whatever. Copenhagen market cabbage. Can't get any better than this. I absolutely love this variety. It's a go-to for us. And like I said, it's another staple one that we grow. Then we also have Georgia Southern Collards. It's a great one for us because we love wilting down collard greens. So healthy, really, really nutritious. It's a powerhouse, and it grows much like Swiss chard from basically spring all the way to fall. So really, really wonderful. And what's great is if we happen to get some cabbage moths, typically they'll be attracted to the collards before they're attracted to other brassicas. So we kind of also use it as a trap crop. If we happen not get any collards, okay, that's fine. We have other crops we can consume. The collards become a great trap crop where then we can treat those insects and keep them away from some of our other more kind of prized crops. Then we also have black magic kale. This is one of the only kales we're going to be growing this year simply because we have so many other crops that we're going to be growing. I want to save room in our garden. And because we do a lot of juicing as well as dehydrating and sauteing, it's a wonderful all-purpose kale for that. So we're going to be growing that black magic kale, but we've grown lots of other kale varieties as well. And last but not least are the Brussels sprouts. Now, we have two varieties of Brussels sprouts. I love growing Brussels sprouts. They're the coolest, most like alien-looking plant in the entire garden. But we have here the Catskill Brussels sprout, really giant-sized Brussels sprouts that form. And then we also have the red bull Brussels sprout. That's actually a red Brussels sprout. Stays red even when cooked. It is so cool, incredible. And I like to eat my foods of color. I really like to have my purples, my greens, my yellows, my reds. I love to eat my foods of color. And so we're gonna be growing those two types of Brussels sprouts in this year's garden. And those are all the cold weather crops that we're gonna be starting right now. All right, now everyone's favorite crop, tomatoes. So we're gonna be starting a lot of tomatoes. This is not all of the tomatoes we're gonna be starting, but for this tray, this is all I can really fit in this tray. So I've got some Abe Lincoln tomatoes, got some Opolka, beautiful paste tomato, love that. Our old German tomato, it's a bicolored giant beefsteak tomato, like 2 to 3 pounds, incredible. One of our favorite tomatoes. The Typhon Mennonite, it's a really beautiful, like rosish red beefsteak, beautiful, beautiful. Supernova grape tomato, awesome in salads. The Floridade tomato, I love this, especially in hot, humid weather. And Michigan gets some of that later in the fall. So I like to have this, or like late summer, early fall, I should say. I like to have that Floridade tomato because it does very well in the hot, humid parts of summer. Then we also have Black Prince. It's a plum tomato, but it's so beautiful. It's this beautiful chocolate, kind of burgundy colored tomato. Great White. I grew this last year, didn't do as well because it was very cold in the spring. Got a kind of a bad start, but I want to grow this again because it's got such a creamy, soft, supple, I should say, texture. It's not very mealy. It's really creamy and smooth despite it being a beefsteak. Mortgage Lifter, this is like a staple for us. Love growing it. It's an indeterminate, grows all season, has these gigantic red tomatoes. Awesome for all purpose, love it. Then we also have German Johnson. I haven't grown this in a long time, but a lot of people wanted me to grow that. So I said, you know, this was one of the first varieties we threw into our heirloom garden when we first started gardening here on YouTube. About 10, 12 years ago, we grew that variety and we haven't grown it since. And so a lot of you wanted to see it back in the garden. So I threw it back into our garden this year. We also have Jubilee. This is a determinate. So this is a variety that we love to grow for salads, for slicing. It's really low acid, very sweet. It's kind of a crowd favorite for us. And then Dr. White Cheese. This is, again, just a staple. We grow this every single year. It is a beautiful beefsteak. It's kind of it's not quite yellow, not quite orange. It's like kind of a mix of the two, but it's so beautiful. And they get huge, like 2, 3 pounds. They're massive. So those are all of the tomatoes we're gonna grow today, but we're gonna start a bunch more. We'll bring you guys along for it, obviously. But these are all gonna go into these cell trays here. Now, again, like I said, these are only gonna last for maybe 5 to 7 weeks, and they're gonna get transplanted. From there, they're gonna go into 3-inch pots, or if things get warm enough, staying the way they've been, we may just move these right from here into the garden. I don't know, I'll feel it out. You gotta use gardener's intuition, but they may go into 3-inch pots or they may go directly into the garden. All right, so now we're gonna start some onion seeds. Like I said, when it comes to onion seeds, we do not start a single seed per cell. It's very wasteful on space, and we wouldn't get that many seeds planted compared to how many onions we need in our garden for our family. So what we do is we actually take these 3-inch pots here. It's really cool. Take these 3-inch pots, pack them down a little bit, nice and even. And then what we'll do is we'll take our seeds. We got here our Utah yellow. These are like our staples for our garden. You want to make sure you're picking an onion that grows well in your zone. I'm not talking zone as in like zone 6, zone 5, zone 4, not your growing zone, but your daylight zone. Here in Michigan, we're in what's considered a long day zone. That means our days are longer than if you were to go further south, your days are slightly shorter. And because onions are photosensitive, that means they bulb based on the daylight period. You want to go with an onion that's going to do well in your zone. Otherwise, if you were to grow a short day onion in a long day zone, you're going to get beautiful tops, but no bulb development. If you grow a long day onion in a short day zone, you're going to get beautiful tops, but no bulb development. And so you want to make sure you know where that zone is. Typically, people say it's about the 42, 43 degree latitude line. That's just kind of hearsay, obviously. You do your own research, but for the most part, that's kind of the rough line where onions can be divided between a long day and a short day. If you're north of the 43 degree latitude line, you're going to be in a long day zone. If you're south of the 43 degree latitude line, you're going to be in a short day zone. So we're going to grow the Utah yellow. That does really well. We got some Zabroon shallots. Now these are in the onion family. These are still an allium, but these are shallots. They're amazing. It's like garlic and an onion had a baby, and it's awesome. Love it, love it. Also have some long white bunching onions here. These are a crowd favorite for us. Love those and everything. We also have our white sweet Spanish. Now again, this is a long day, and this onion does so well for us. We'll pretty consistently get 1 to 2 pound onions. It's amazing, baseball sized onions. And then we have the red burgundy. And this is, again, just another staple for us. We grow these 3 varieties in literally every year's garden. And it is beautiful because it's so deep red. So this is definitely one that you definitely want to give a shot. And it's great. They all have a really long shelf life too, which I like, because once you harvest an onion, you don't want to have to eat them all within like 1 to 2 months. So as long as you keep them cool and in kind of a dark location, they'll typically stay for like 5-7 months. All right, so what we're gonna do after we kind of press down the soil a little bit, get it nice and level, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our onion seeds, and this seems really crazy. Most gardeners are very scared to do this, but take your seeds and we're gonna sprinkle like 20 to 30 onion seeds over the top of that soil there. And when those grow up, we're not gonna thin them. We're gonna let them all grow up just as one kind of like, almost like a mat of onions growing up. It'll look like grass growing up. And then from there, when they're ready to move out in the garden, we're gonna divide them out and they just separate right from the soil super easily. Now there's a lot of other crops, like I said, I'm not starting today just because we don't have enough time for everything, but I'll tell you about them. That way, if you're curious, you can at least start them. So things like peas, right? So peas, they're a cold weather crop. We're gonna start ours directly in the ground. I prefer not to start them inside, but you definitely can, because you're gonna be transplanting them out hopefully pretty soon. So you can start those. You also could start a lot of your herbs. Things like cilantro, loves cold weather. A lot of your basils, parsley, sage, oregano, chives, anything like that, those can all get started. Also your flowers, right? So your marigolds, things that stay pretty small, right? You're not gonna be moving your marigolds and stuff out really early. So your marigolds, they typically take a little while to germinate, and then they take a little while to get growing. Things like zinnias, your bachelor buttons, things like that. Some of your more kind of upright flowers, those do really, really well if you start them right now. I wouldn't start things that get really big really fast. Don't go for, like, I know we're starting some tomatoes, thinking like warm weather already. Sunflowers are a warm weather flower, but they would do horribly if you started them right now. Like, even if you started them in this container, they'd be flowering and like this tall before you moved them outside. So don't start big stuff yet. Small upright flowers do awesome, but that's just kind of a rough idea. Again, just scratching the surface of all the things that you could be starting right now in March. It is a good time to start thinking about it. You don't want to wait and then regret not starting stuff later. You definitely want to get an idea right now, because it's early March. And so you still have all of March to kind of think about this. where you're still gonna have time, but you wanna start some stuff, because if you don't, spring's right around the corner. Spring is right around the corner. Like, I can hear it. It's knocking on the door, and I've got spring fever. I hope you guys do as well. So get your garden started, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and also, if you're interested in any of these seed starting equipments, or seed starting trays, seeds, labels, anything like that, we carry everything over at MIgardener.com. Give us a check out. We got super affordable pricing. All stuff is packed, fulfilled by us versus a small family company, but we appreciate your support, even your viewership. So thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you all on the next episode. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care.